y'all hear me okay? Good. Guess it's time we get started. Everybody will get your books and turn to the first lesson in our book. Is anybody needing a book that wasn't here last week? If you need one, we've got some. I want to remember Brother Dennis and Sister Tony. From what I understand, his biopsy was not cancer, so that's a big relief on him, I'm sure, and it's a big relief to me because I was afraid of that. But he's doing well, and so is Sister Tony, and let's keep them in our minds. I thought about doing something like bringing a sack of golf balls and giving each person one, and every time I say throw it at me to help break me from doing that. I watched myself last week and I could not believe how many times I said It's purely habit, and I'll try to do better than that, but I'm sure Kathy will give me a count when I go home. Before we start, let's say a short prayer. Lord, we thank you for this day, this beautiful sky that we have, that we were waking up to. We thank you for every person that's represented here. We'd ask you to bless this class, help us to get the most out of our study. We'd ask you to be with those that are sick, especially Brother Tony and Sister Tony and Brother Dennis. Please watch over them and guide the doctors and help them to back to normal health. And we'd ask you to bless each one of us this morning and bless our church assembly today, and please forgive our sins. In Jesus' name, amen. We talked about last week the concept and definition of stewardship, and we went over that pretty good collectively as far as the entirety of it. But I want to briefly review that in our first part of our book. I want to explain something to you how I plan on doing this. The man that wrote this book was a 39-year minister at Creve Hall Church of Christ in Nashville. And he was very, very respected and very intelligent, which is something I can't offer, but he's done a real good job on this book, and I plan on staying very close to what he has said. So you may catch me doing a lot of reading, but if I do, I think it's worth doing it. I do have my own notes out to the side that if I thought of something we could add. But every lesson is going to start with the aim of the lesson. But since this is the first lesson, the first thing that it goes over is the aim of this series of lessons, which is 13 weeks. And it says to create within each one of us a keener consciousness of our opportunities, privileges, responsibilities, and potentials in worship to God and in service to man. And to inspire each of us to accept the challenge thus presented and to act in a more dedicated way as good stewards of the grace of God. There's so many parables and examples in the Bible of stewards, and we'll eventually get to all of them, I'm pretty sure. Now, the aim of this lesson this morning is the earth is the Lord's, and our memory verse, or the verse that our lesson is centered around, is 1 Corinthians 10:26. It's a very short verse, but it says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof." You know, we feel like we've managed to do pretty well if we get 10 or 15 acres. But there I went. There's people out west that have 15, 20,000 acres. Of course, land ain't no count, but they have lots of ownership of land. Lots of people have billions and billions of dollars, and that sounds very impressive, and I guess it is, depending on if they got it honestly. But imagine that everything you see, everything we own or ever will own is God's. Now we know that's true because it just got through saying it. We're going to review some of the definitions of stewardship. Like I said, Webster says, going by the book, Webster says of a steward, one who acts as a supervisor or administrator as a finances and property for another or others, a manager. You know, a lot of people that are prominent that we see and hear of, like presidents, governors, people that are real popular in TV and movies and stuff, they end up making a whole lot of money, and they can't do the movies and take care of their money too, so they have people that help them do that. I know back at the turn of the century, there were a lot of people in late 1800s, there was a lot of people that were sharecroppers. Well, you need labor, I need a job, you've got a lot of land, I got a lot of skills, I can do your growing and we'll both make money from it. But the owner is always the one that gets, in God's case, the glory, or in the owner's position, he gets the increase. Number two is an officer or employee in a large family or on a large estate to manage the domestic concerns, supervise servants, collect rents or income, or keep accounts. I know a lot of people have a lot of rental houses. We had one rental house, and it like drove us crazy. And I don't know if any of you've ever did that. Some of you may have 15 or 20 or 30, 40, I don't know, but it was not for me. Air conditioning never broke down during the day. Hot water heaters never broke down during the day. And they want it fixed now. So, but that's my responsibility. But there are people that have lots of those units like that have to have somebody to manage their money and manage their properties. The origin of the word steward, we won't spend much time here, is from the Anglo-Saxon stigward, literally a steward, one employed to take care of another's possessions. Sty designated a pen for cattle or swine. I always wondered where pigsty came from. And ward meant one who guards, a warden. In C, a steward manages, guards, uses profitably, and is a warden of that which is not his, but belongs to another. In the parable of the talents, well, we reviewed that last week also, but the only two that were acceptable, there's people that are given great responsibilities. There's those that are given minor responsibilities. And there are those that are not given much responsibility. Sometimes it's because we don't embrace responsibility. You folks need a book? Okay. There's, of course, the case of the parable of the talents. Two of the people demonstrated responsibility by doing something that would increase the volume of the owners, which that's what his responsibility is. If he doesn't want to give him $10, and then 6 months from now I still got that $10, which is exactly what the servant with one talent did. He was so afraid he would fail that he buried it. Now, when you translate that over to Christianity, I know many people that have baptized many people, and that's great, and I'm happy that happened. There are those that have not been able to convert too many, and there are those that don't even try to convert. We need to be careful that we're not one of those. Going back to the parable of the sower, we need to remember it's not our responsibility to convert that person. If we can, in one fast swoop after studying with them, that's fine. But the increase, God has said, is going to happen because of what He does. We just plant the seed. I brought that up again because I saw somewhere on television somebody using a seed sower, and they were sowing fertilizer, but they were going out through there and it's just going everywhere. That's the way we are, through our attitude, through how we treat people, our generosity, how we are towards the impression we leave on people. And of course we can't translate those things that we're supposed to do if we don't have the knowledge to do it. So we have to study to show ourselves approved. The owner delivered unto his own servants his goods. The increase as well as the original amount belong to the owner. Just because I give you 5 talents, or say $5,000, and you're supposed to take care of that, and I trust you to handle that for me while I'm gone, then when I come back, I don't expect you to, if you've made $2,000 on that $5,000, that's mine. That's not yours. And God's the same way. What He's given us is ours. And we may hoard up money, we may hoard up property, but we have to remember, as stewards of the Word, ambassadors of the Word, we have to use what we have. And we'll find out what happens when we do on down the study trail here. But the accumulation was the owner's of the master, and everything that we do and have, we need to use for the good of the kingdom and God's glory. Number 3 of this section on page 10, stewardship implies making an increase for the owner or use as he authorizes. In this parable, 1 talent man was condemned because he made no increase for the owner. Now those are things that stewardship is, and in section D, what stewardship is not. It's important for us to know that. It's not the use and consumption of property for selfish interest. It's not an accumulation or hoarding for ourselves. Increase belongs to the owner, not a selfish distribution of wealth. Even this should be for the owner's glory, to accomplish his aims and by his authority. I guess we've all heard of people, primarily it's movie stars, because that's who they talk about all the time, but somebody will sue somebody because the person that was managing their money and their property kind of siphoned off the top a little bit, and they found out about it. Sometimes it's in the millions of dollars. That's a poor steward. Not that that anybody in here would steal from somebody, but I'm just saying he didn't use the opportunity he had to relieve the owner of any responsibility. You go do what you do good, and I'll do what I do good. Section 2, all things belong to God. And by the way, I meant to bring up, I recalculated what a talent is worth. Kathy, it's different than what you're saying, but I looked it up on about 10 different places. A talent weighs approximately 100 pounds. Well, there's 16 ounces in a pound, so that's 1,600 ounces. And at today's market, yesterday, was $23.60 for the price of silver. So that times 1,600 is $37,760. This man that gave responsibility, that's a lot of money. I mean, I guess I can sympathize with the person that had the one talent. You know, if you give him $2, that might be one thing, but he didn't. He gave. Now, that's not what it was worth back then. You know, back then a talent could have been, you know, if you add up the 100 ounces, it could have been worth, in today's terms, it could have been worth $600. I don't know what it would have been, but that's what it's worth today. Backing up, there's something I wrote out to the side that we need to always remember. One of the purposes of this class is in number 3 in section 1 of C, the stewardship sets a precedent for our Christian productivity, and we need to remember that. How many of you, and I believe in openness and honesty, how many of you have ever in your lifetime, you don't have to raise your hand, felt like I'm just not doing enough? I just don't feel like I'm doing enough. Well, I would venture to say almost all of us have done that, have had that feeling. Well, there's only one way to change that. That's do the opposite of what we're feeling, and that's help the church, help our elders. Our elders are deserving of the highest regard and highest respect. And I know when I worked where I worked there for 22 years. I don't remember anybody ever coming up to me and saying, "Good job." And all the labor was under my control. All the plants were under my control. The productivity in the fields was under my control. The containers were under my control. Fertility, insects, disease. Nobody ever come up and said, "Man, you're doing a great job." And because of that, I eventually got it through my head to translate that deficiency to a positive to my guys. And I started finding out, and I appreciate David bringing up when he was up here going to do the prayer. I appreciate him saying that I paid a compliment to my lineman that he played with on. I do remember doing that, and I remembered after I did that, David, Wendell Stamps hit me on the rear end like players do sometimes, like, way to go. So I decided I would do something and try to encourage these workers. And it was something as simple and easy as just coming up to them and just saying, "Man, that looks good. You guys are doing a good job." And if they were working like this, you could just see them turn it up a notch. That's not why I did it, but I did it for the mental side of it. And they got to where they would bring me stuff from home. One year, this one guy brought me the biggest bowl of the homemade pico de gallo that was the absolute best I ever had in my life. And I brought it home, and then we had Christmas, and my middle son that comes here sometime, he ate about 3/4 of it. I didn't get much, but I appreciate the thought that they did. They appreciated that. God appreciates when we do things, and we're blessed when we do. Number 3 of section D is not a selfish distribution of wealth. Even this should be for the owner's glory, to accomplish his aims and by his authority. Now, as we go into a study of why all things belong to God, I told you last week that I can go out and look into the stars, and I just can't get my mind wrapped around that. I see a lot of stars. And just for your own personal information, a good friend of mine loves to stargaze, and he does it with some really good binoculars. He doesn't use a telescope or nothing. He told me that one of the best places in the state to go see the wonder of God's creation, as far as the stars and the planets and all that are concerned, is Pickett State Park up a little east of Livingston. And he said, "Terry, I never knew it could get so dark." He said, but it is just, he said, Livingston pretty much is a small town. It shuts down at night, and he said there's not many street lights, and he said, and here we are about 12 or 15 miles away from Livingston, off in the bottom of these hills, and he said, it is really beautiful what you see. He said, the Milky Way doesn't even look like you used to seeing it. He said, it's just almost like a fog up there. And he said, well, when you look at situations like that and you see all those planets, I just can't comprehend that. But God owns all that. Everything we see, everything that we smell, everything that we possess is God's. And there's some good points going to come up later about that. But in 1 Corinthians, as we said before, in 1 Corinthians 10:26, in section 2, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Deuteronomy 10:14, behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens is the Lord's thy God, the earth also with all that therein is. You know, there's a lot here. I can't imagine. I think I heard the other day that the circumference of the earth is approximately, I don't know, roughly 25,300 and something miles. That's a lot of circumference. The earth, look at how big the oceans are. They're deep too. I was once on a cruise and I just couldn't sleep. I have restless leg syndrome. I don't know if any of y'all know what that is, but you just can't sit still. Your legs just worry you to death, want you to move. So I got up to go walking around, not a soul to be seen. But they have these little computer monitors, like kind of in a hospital or an airport, and they're about every 200 feet. And I'm walking along. I had just got through standing there at the edge of the boat looking off, and I thought, boy, that is way down there. And we were moving, I think, about 28 knots. So the waves were going that from the front, they were just going about like that. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know they could go that fast. But anyway, I'm looking off down through there, and I'm going, I wonder how deep that is. On my way back to the room, I looked up at that monitor, and it was showing our position. It plotted where we were on the screen, heading to where we were going. And I looked over there, and it said speed, 28 knots, temperature, water temperature. And then I got to the one that said depth, current depth, 1,964 feet. And I remember looking off down at that water, and I thought, if I fell over, I'd be gone. They couldn't slow down quick enough to get me. And there's nobody around. Nobody would know that I had fell over. And it gave me what I'd like to call is the heebie-jeebies. If any of you know what, it's when that hair stands up on your neck and you kind of get a shiver come up your neck, your back. But this earth is big. It's really, really, really big. It seems like it's getting smaller because our transportation means are faster and faster. But it's all God's, every bit of it. Not part of it, but all of it. 1 Chronicles 29, verses 11 through 14 says, list 5 or more things that belong to God and over which he reigns. What are some things that y'all put down? Power. Huh? Greatness. Okay, I was in the right one then. I wanted to make sure because there's 5 other things listed. But greatness, power, glory, victory, majesty of the earth, kingdom, riches, honor, hand, to make great. Leviticus 25:23, under the law of Moses, land was not to be sold forever. Didn't know that. Why was this true? because it was God's, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. They recognized that the ownership was God's. I won't belabor that. I guess I'm kind of doing that, but it's very important that we understand what we think we own and how rich we may or may not be. Even when we're poor, like we are, what we do have still God's. He doesn't let us have all of it because we're poor. I know my mama she didn't get mad much, but there's one thing he always did, and she got so mad at him. We would go to a family reunion, my daddy'd be sitting there, and he's kind of getting tired of hanging around. He's ready to go back to the house. And he'd just real quick say, well, y'all go to the poorhouse with us. and my mom would get in the car and she said, I wish you would quit doing that. And he said, why? And she said, people are going to think we're poor. And he said, we are poor. So I always remember him saying that. Of course, we weren't poor, but it was funny on his part. But even when we don't have much, what little we do have is still his. In Psalms 50, 10 through 11, for every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon a 1,000 hills. I know all the fowls of the mountains, and the wild beast of the field are mine. We sit out on the porch a lot during the summer and watch birds, and we like to feel the wind blowing, and after 10 o'clock, because the sun's right in our face until then. But it's interesting to see the intricate nature of little birds and stuff. And then about the time you think you've seen about everything there is to see today, along will come a little hummingbird. And I don't know if any of you have ever had one get in your house or a porch or in the garage. I'm telling you, their little body, for all that they do and how fast they do it, their little body is not, I would say it's about as big as a lima bean, small green lima bean, baby lima. It's so small. I was afraid I was going to crush it. And he just sitting there looking at me, and I let it go, and it flew off. But the things that he's created are his. They're there for us to enjoy. Ezekiel 18:4, Haggai 2:8. All the treasures in the earth are the Lord's. And what are those treasures? They're referring to silver and gold. In Ezekiel 18:4, all souls are mine. The sum of all these verses is that all creations belong to God. There is nothing that is not his. In section 3, God gives gifts to man. In his Exodus 31, 1 through 5, wisdom and skills and capabilities come from God. That's not material. That's just one of the gifts that we get. Our abilities, our talents, and I mean physical, artistic talents. It's talking about concerning Bezalel. In order to build a tabernacle, God said, I have filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and in understanding and in knowledge and in all manner of workmanship, to devise artistic works, to work in gold and in silver and in bronze and in cutting of jewels to set them, and in carvings of wood, to work in all manner of workmanship. So even things that we're able to do come from God. So those are talents given to us. And if there's talents that are given to us, then what do you think we should do? Use them? I got to admit, when I retired and I was ready to retire, I can't tell you how many times in the nursery business, water lines don't break during the day. They break at 2 o'clock in the morning. And the alarm goes off at 2:01 in the morning. And I have to get up because there's about 300 gallons a minute pouring out of that water line. And I have to go fix that or call somebody to fix it. Now they're mad at me for waking them up, but it was our responsibility to keep that working. And if we don't, our plants are going to be dead by 2 o'clock the next afternoon because of the porous media that they're planted in. I had done that for so long and got to work so early for so many years that I was just tired and I wanted to retire. And I have to say that there's days that I don't use my talents. First off, I don't have many, but I sit on the porch maybe a little too much. I watch Andy Griffith just a little too much. Gunsmoke just a little too much. I might get on YouTube and watch airplane jets taking off, passenger jets taking off, trains running. Those are things I enjoy doing. But my time has to be spent wisely. And I'm going to try to make it a point to use my time. I mean, Kathy and I have talked about it. I'm going to try to dedicate more of my time to what the church here needs, to help you, to help the elders. You can help me, I'll help you, and we'll try to do it all for the glory of God. And we'll do it all for the glory of increase here at Central. And if we'll all do that, I think we'll make a real good team. You already got a real good team. I'm just a portal, a transfer, as you might say. But I looked up Bezaleel. He was the chief artisan of the tabernacle and was in charge of building the Ark of the Covenant. And he was assisted by Aholiab. What did God put in the hearts of these men in Exodus 31:6? Wisdom. I heard somebody say wisdom. Where did Israel get the power to get wealth in Deuteronomy 8:17 through 18? Huh? From the Lord. In verse 17, my power and my hand, and verse 18, the Lord your God. There's one thing that I'm adding to our lesson. I won't spend too much time on it because I don't have much time. What time's the bell ring? 10 after. I got to really get moving. Now, if we don't get through this, I'm still going to go to lesson 2 next week because most of the beginnings of these lessons are adequate enough for you to understand it. But for your benefit, you finish the study and try to learn from it. In Amos 9:13, it talks about overtake the reaper. Have you ever heard that expression, overtake the reaper? You know what that means? God's blessings will come faster than you can keep up with them. Now, when it comes talking about the plowman and all that, in other parts of what we've been studying, or going to study, the plowman's job is to get the ground ready. Where the Jews were growing all these crops and stuff is some of the most fertile land. It outranks even the Mississippi Delta. I mean, it is super duper dirt. It is so nutritious and so has so much soil retention that sometimes crops just keep on producing. And now it's time to plow for next year. Well, they're still producing. God will bless us more than we can imagine. In Isaiah 28, it says, concerning the plowman, Isaiah said, for his God doth instruct him to discretion and doth teach him. How does God teach us today? Through his word. Over on page 11, for ability in other activities, this also cometh from the Lord of hosts, which is wonderful in counsel and excellent in working, in Isaiah 28, 27, 29 through 29. God gives us by inheritance certain abilities and skills. We are to develop them, cultivate them, and use them for his glory. But for the goodness and grace of God, we should not have the physical or mental ability to cultivate and develop skills and talents to be dedicated to useful purposes. And I wrote down to make sure we emphasize his glory. So everything we do is to his glory. In B, all life comes from God. Man can make many things, but he cannot make life. He giveth to all life and breath in all things, in Acts 17:25. 1 Corinthians 4:7, we have received all we have. What hast thou that thou dost not receive? Man then is a possessor, and this is a really important part of our lesson this morning. He is a possessor of things, not the owner of all that we have. Ownership implies title. We have title to things like cars and houses and land and stocks and bonds, etc., only in relation to our fellow man, not in relation to God, because everything belongs to God. And number two, owners may possess, but a possessor does not necessarily own. So let's make sure we get a good, clear understanding of possession and ownership. We can have a whole lot of things, but they're not ours. Now, God blesses us well. He blesses some better than others. Number three, the early church possessed but did not claim to own things. Neither said any of them that aught of the things which he possessed was his own, in Acts 4:32. As stewards, we have only temporary control of some of God's creation and God's gifts to us. We're to use it as good stewards. Who gives and takes away, in Job 1:21? The Lord. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. I've never seen anybody leave this earth with anything other than a suit or a dress, a few flowers. That's it. Not going to need it. It's not needed where they will be going to. Finally, as stewards, we must give account. What is required in stewards? In 1 Corinthians 4:2, a man may be found faithful. How can we prove we are trustworthy to have charge over much? Faithful in that which is least is faithful in much. There is the kingdom of heaven likened to a certain king which took account of his servants. He then began to reckon his account with his servants. So every one of us shall give account of himself to God, in Romans 14:12. According to what shall we give our account or receive? What is done in the body, where he hath done good or bad. And in conclusion, is the bell rung? There it went. I can barely hear it with my ears pointing this way. In conclusion, there is no escape from reckoning with God. He has bestowed upon us many blessings which we should be abundantly grateful. Hearts filled with gratitude will lead to faithful stewardship. God sees all, knows all, and will call us to account. Appreciate everybody being here. I hope you are enjoying the book. It serves a lot of purposes. When I went through it, it gives you only the absolute essential verses that you need to look up. There's a place for you to write in there so you can sort of participate in the class by that way. And it gives me a guide to go by. I hope everybody enjoyed the class, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Invite anybody that you know that might have an interest in it, and we'll see you next Sunday.
King of my life.